we begin? Call meeting in order, American Canyon Fire Protection District Board meeting for April 25, 2023. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Board Member Abadamus?
Here.
Board Member Joseph?
Here.
Board Member Oro?
Here.
Vice Chair Washington?
Here.
Chair Garcia?
Here. We're going to report on closed session, confirmation of reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Board Chair, board members, members of the public, the board convened an open session at 5:31, and after concluding that there were no comments on closed session matters from the public, adjourned to closed session to address the two matters for closed session consideration. Board Member Abadamus initially participated telephonically, which is consistent with the principles of the Brown Act, and that her participation was for a portion of closed session. There is no right for public participation in closed session under the Brown Act. You concluded your closed session at 6:29, and Board Member Abadamus was present at that time. I will further delineate reportable action in a written report under the provisions of Government Code Section 54-957.1. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Any questions from board members?
No. Nope.
Hearing none, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Moving on with proclamations and presentations this evening.
Chair, if I may, real quick, retired Captain David Medina, who will be receiving the proclamation tonight, unfortunately was unable to make tonight's meeting, so we wanted to ensure that we recognized David for his 26 years of service with the fire district, and we will give him the proclamation once he returns back to town. But unfortunately, scheduling just wasn't going to allow him to make it tonight. Thank you.
Join us on Zoom?
Doesn't appear he was able to make it.
Okay, great. Well, it does give a great pleasure to the board to be able to do this in honor of his service. American Canyon Fire Protection District proclamation.
Mr. Mayor, Chair, we're going to wait to do this, you said? No, we're going to do it now.
No, I'm sorry. We'll do it now tonight, and then we will present him the proclamation once he gets back in town in person.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Apologies.
American Canyon Fire Protection District proclamation honoring Fire Captain David Medina for 26 years of dedicated service. Whereas David Medina began his service as a reserve firefighter with the American Canyon Fire Protection District on July 1, 1997. And whereas reserve firefighter Medina's dedication to the firefighting profession led to his full-time employment with the district on March 5th, 2001, where he immediately assumed the role of co-coordinator with heavy rescue team. Whereas firefighter Medina's commitment to excellence in urban search and rescue team coordination helped the district become one of 13 OES recognized teams in California at the time. And whereas firefighter Medina assisted with the Fire Explorer program during 2008 to 2011, and whereas firefighter Medina was promoted to fire captain on November 23rd, 2014, and whereas due to Captain Medina's valuable education and experience in electronics, he managed the communication equipment, including pagers, phones, mobile apparatus, and the two-way radios for the district. And whereas during his 22 years of service, Captain Medina pursued professional development in areas such as company officer, chief officer, paramedic, hazmat specialist, and specialty classes in radiology, biological, and terrorist attack response. And whereas Captain Medina has been a valued member of the American Canyon team, his dedication to duty, professionalism, and meritorious service have made a positive difference throughout his career. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Leon Garcia, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District, hereby acknowledge and commend Fire Captain David Medina for all of his contributions to the health, safety, comfort, and quality of life to the citizens of American Canyon, and congratulate him upon his retirement. Bravo. Pass that down. Martha, please. Thank you all. Good to recognize him. Yeah. Thank you. Move on to public comment. Any comments from the public? Matters not on the agenda. Seeing none?
No, Chair.
Anybody online? Okay, we'll close public comment at this time. Move on to agenda changes. If there are no changes to the agenda, I'll accept the motion for consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a change to the agenda.
Okay?
I would like to switch item number 10 and number 11, just in terms of order.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Abdalbas?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Board Member, Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Moving on to the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Abu-Damus?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Moving on to public hearing, there is none this evening. Moving on to our business items, we'll take up now item 11, ratify resolution 2023-08.
Thank you, Chair. At our February 28th meeting, the board approved a resolution to move forward with the LAFCO Commission for the annexation of the Green Island property. Unfortunately, due to technological challenges, Board Member Abadamos was unable to cast her vote. So tonight is we're just asking that the board do a ratification to the resolution to allow all 5 members of the board to vote on the resolution to move forward for the fire district annexation through the LAFCO Commission for the property referred to as Green Island properties. Is that correct, Council? So with that, Chair, that concludes my report out on this item, and I'd be happy to answer any questions any of the board members may have.
Well, we've had the opportunity to look at this item in the past. Are there any questions from the board members? No. Seeing none, board ready for public comment? Public comment on this matter is open.
Is this that property, what is this about?
It's the Green Island
Green Island
Vineyard parcel,
Parcel.
annexing it into the fire district,
Protection
not the
District.
city.
Okay. Any other public comment? Anybody online?
No, Chair.
Okay. We'll close public comment, return to board for desired action.
If
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the motion.
Okay?
I'd like to move resolution number 2023-08, a resolution of application by the American Canyon Fire Protection District requesting the local agency formation commission of Napa County to initiate proceedings for the annexation of the Green Island property to the American Canyon Fire Protection District.
so moved, or seconded.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Board Member Abu-Damus?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, board. Moving back to our business item, now we'll take up item 10, mid-year budget.
Thank you, Chair. At this point, I'd like to introduce someone who's not a stranger to the board, but our financial consultant, Ken Campo, who has provided exemplary financial guidance to the district over many years to present the mid-year report for the fire district for fiscal year 22-23. Mr. Campo.
Thank you, Chief. And Martha, do I pull this up?
It's already up.
Oh, there it is. It's not on the screen.
Well, good to have you here this evening. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Chairman Garcia, members of the board. Let's see, get this moving. There we go. So what we'll be looking at this evening is, first we'll look at kind of where we stand through March of this year, so a budget update through the first 9 months of the year. And we'll take a look at some of the recommended changes that we have for the board to consider. We have an updated forecast to kind of incorporate the updated information. And then we have an update on the OPEB and the PERS unfunded liabilities. So we'll take a brief look at those as well. This information was reviewed with the Finance Committee last week on 4/20 of all days, but we were able to get through it okay.
Yes, we were. Any significant change since then?
No,
Oh, good. That's good news.
Hope you fired up.
good one. Okay, as I mentioned, we'll take a look at the monthly financial report through March. So this first slide, the board's seen this before. It does get a little busy. The kind of the red colored brick at the bottom is the district's contingency reserve. That's set at 20% of budgeted expenditures. The blue bar that sits on top of that red is what I call the operating reserve, if you will, or the dry period funding needs of the district. That's set at 50% of budgeted revenues. That contingency reserve at the bottom can only be used with board authority. The operating reserve is used to, pay expenses of the district to cover those expenses between those property tax payment dates, which typically occur in December and April. So the district needs to build up those funds, and then they're drawn down until the next property tax payment. The green line going across is the budgeted. It's where we think the balance should be throughout the year based on the budgeted expenditures and budgeted revenues. The blue line going across is where it was the actual balance from the previous year. As of the end of March, there was about $4.3 million in the reserve fund, or in the general fund balance. As you can see, it's ahead of that green dot at the end of March, so we're kind of projecting ahead of where we thought we would be at this time. It's quite a bit less than the previous year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the report. But that difference is kind of made up of a couple of key things. One is we started the year with a lower reserve balance than we had expected, and we'll talk about that when we get to the summary information later, and kind of the timing of property tax payments. But you can see by April, we expect to be right back up where we were, pretty much consistent with the previous year. And we'll see that when we look at the overall summary, where we're kind of at a break-even point again this year. Okay, moving on to cash. This pretty much tracks pretty closely with the reserve balance. I'd like to point out here is the difference between the high and the low points for cash. It's about $3.5 million. So that's kind of that operating funds that we were talking about that we need to have on hand. So the cash moves pretty much to that extent during the year. So we need that dry period funding. Without that dry period funding, the district would need to engage in some sort of a short-term borrowing arrangement to continue to cover costs. This is our chart where we track salaries and benefits throughout the year. You can notice that's a fairly straight line. So salaries and benefits are fairly uniform throughout the year. We're tracking, starting to track below budget here because of the vacancies and the fact that we haven't filled those BC positions that the board authorized to be filled as of January 1st. So we're seeing some savings in both salaries and benefits. It looks a little unusual that the current budget line, which is the green line, and the prior year actual are about the same. But if you notice that note on there is that last year at this time there was about 232,000 of strike team deployment costs that were in those salary and benefit numbers. We had no strike team deployments this year, so we have no cost associated with that, and as you'll see, there's no revenue associated with it either. Okay, next slide is just overall expenditures, and you can see it tracks very, very closely with salaries and benefits, and that's because salaries and benefits make up about 82% of the budget. And again, it's a fairly straight line, which means our expenses are uniform throughout the year, where our revenues kind of spike with the property tax payments, again, pointing to that fact that we need that dry period financing, or dry period reserve, I should say. Okay, so here's a look at our revenue. You can see we, through March, we're pretty much right on track with where we thought we would be at this time of the year, and tracking pretty close to last year. Again, this is, you can see the key property tax payments there in November and, December and April. We expect to end up about the same point we were last year in terms of revenue. And again, the note there in blue is that last year we had 443,000 of strike team reimbursements revenue that's being offset by increased property tax revenue and fire service fees this year. So that's kind of a quick look at where we are through March of this year. And this next slide is kind of a summary overall when we look at the last year's audited numbers on the left-hand side of each of those blocks. And then for 22-23, this current year, we're comparing budget with what I called mid-year here, but it's just our update through March. You can see there's been some, well, let me talk about 21-22, where you see a deficit for the year if you see revenue over and under expenses of 351,000. There were two things that happened last year. There was a inadvertent payment made to the OPEB trust fund that happened in July of 22. We're still kind of digging into that to figure out how that happened. We usually make that payment around mid-year. It got made in July of last year. It was $174,000. It got coded to the wrong account. It went to the pension expense account. So we got the mid-year, we looked and said, oh, we need to make our OPEB payment. So we made another payment in January. And then it was discovered as the auditors were in cleaning up accounts at the end of the year. I don't know if it had something to do with the turnover of city finance staff and all of that was going on. It took them a while to finally close out the books. And so we didn't discover this until probably October, November, December timeframe. So after we adopted the final budget.
Were you able to rectify it?
Pardon?
Were you able to rectify it and pull the money out and change it around, or are you going to leave it?
Well, that's a decision that's up to the board. So far, we've just decided to leave it in the OPEB trust fund. I mean, we could claw the money back. There's a way to get it back into the city's general fund. But right now, it's at the OPEB trust fund. So it's just further pay down of the unfunded
Yeah, understood. Okay, that's good.
unfunded liability. So the other thing that happened was, again, the audit adjustments came in late, and so we didn't catch this for final budget, but y'all know what happened with the financial markets last summer, big downturn. There was a big write-down of investments. If you look at June 30 of last year, you were probably at the bottom of the trough. So there was a $90,000, $91,000 write-down of the market value of securities held by the district as of June 30. So that was a further impact on the fund balance. And for those accounting types out there, it was a paper loss, right? So it wasn't an actual loss, it was a paper loss, but that paper loss gets moved from fund balance to an offset against the district's investments. So it does tend to draw down the fund balance, even though it's not a real loss, it's a paper loss. So hopefully we get to June 30 this year, and that starts turning around. At least we hope so, and that'll add back to the fund balance at year end. So as a result, we ended up with a negative $351,000. Without those two items, I think we'd have been much closer to break even where we thought we were going to be. Okay, so that was 21-22. Going to 22-23, at final budget, we thought we'd be down about $417,000. We thought there'd be a deficit for this current year. As you can see now, we're at a positive $35,000, so we're essentially at a break even. And that's, there was about an $86,000 improvement in revenues, and we'll take a look at those and in the next slide, and a $367,000 decrease in expenditures. And as you'll see in our next slide, with our budget adjustment recommendation, that's primarily salaries and benefits, again, due to vacancies and due to the fact we have not filled those BC positions as of today. So, not much change at all in the fire mitigation fee account. We had started to factor in some Watson Ranch revenues in those mitigation fees. It was $200,000 or $250,000. As of just last week, we're at probably about $380,000. So I think we're really on doing well there. I think we'll be able to hit that target for the year. Then there were no transfers out to the FF&E fund, Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund this year. Speaking of Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund, this is the $2 million in revenue. That's the $1.8 million in lease financing proceeds that came in to pay for the two Type 1 engines that the district ordered last year. And that's what that $1,883,000 represents. The other projects that were included in the budget were either deferred or, in the case of the $140,000 or so for radios, we got those through a countywide grant, so we didn't have to expend that. The rescue boat that was in the budget is the district's now pursuing a grant for that rescue boat as well. And the command vehicles were acquired through the enterprise lease, so we didn't have that expenditure. So actual expenditures will be about $263,000 less than what we had budgeted. I left out one. It was the station alerting system. The new station alerting system, the company we were dealing with, or the district was dealing with, is no longer in business, so they're out looking for a replacement for that company. So that leads us to the mid-year budget adjustments, and you can see the revenue, small increases, training reimbursements of $11,000. We're seeing, some additional plan review permits coming in, probably the, Watson Ranch and other commercial projects. Investment earnings, investment rates are going up, so looks like we should do a little better this year. depending on what the market adjustment looks like. Could be much higher or lower. And workers' comp reimbursements, we have about 22,000 more than we had projected. And then you can see on the expenditure side, most of that is all in the salaries and benefit lines. So that's a reduction of about 367,000. So the two combined is 453,000.
Am I correct in assuming the, looking at wages, overtime, the 200,000? Is that reflecting of being, needing more staff on board,
Yeah, that
firefighters?
because of the vacancies, we're
Right.
having to incur more overtime
Right.
to cover those spots. So we're
Yeah.
bumping overtime up by 200,000, but that's offset by the salary and benefit savings.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, now this next slide is our updated forecast. You can see those green bars represent the projected or actual or projected ending fund balance for the general fund for each of those respective years. The brick at the bottom, again, is the contingency reserve, 20% of expenditures. So you see that rising slightly over time as the budget goes up. Same with the blue kind of wavy area. That's 50% of projected revenues. So that's going up as well. The ending balance, you see 21, 22, 22, 23 remains fairly flat. Then it starts dipping a little bit as we're bringing on or projecting full staffing levels. And also this model brings in a third BC in January of 24. Now, I know that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. That's the next discussion we'll have with the board is the budget discussion. But just for modeling purposes, we wanted to include that. This model includes additional property tax revenue from the Watson Ranch development for residential coming in starting in 23, 24, then being layered in over a number of years, 4 or 5 years. 24, 25, again, is bringing a little more property tax revenue for the residential side. And then we start bringing in some commercial property tax revenue starting in 24, 25. What we did is we took the information from the mitigation fee study last summer that the board looked at. What we did is that report contained assessed valuation and square footage information by development type. So it broke it down by commercial and industrial and office. And so we took those numbers, came up with an average per square foot, and then looked at the new development on the horizon, and using those figures, layered that in. And I bring it in over like a 4-year period, so it's being layered in over 4 years. Again, starting in fiscal 24, 25. So that's kind of how the model was built. And you can see, there's the deficit projected for 23, 24. Then we start closing that gap by 25, 26, and then we actually go the other direction from that point forward. What's not built in here, if all of this happens, obviously there's going to be additional service requirements. And
Yes.
so that's the next step, is going to be to take the district's new master plan and start building in those sort of costs for the future in terms of both staffing and capital needs. But this is just kind of a model that gives us kind of a feel for what's happening in the near term and then what the capacity is longer term. So I'm fairly confident these revenues will be there. It's again, a matter of timing. I think we've had that discussion.
Ken, a quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the commercial property tax revenue increases in 24, 25, and forward. I'm assuming some of that was the Giovannoni project that was approved but is now being challenged. Assuming that causes some delay in happening.
That was one of the projects.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we know how much of an impact, let's say it takes a year or two before that revenue starts kicking in. How significant is that in terms of the forecasting?
That one project alone is not that terribly significant in terms of the overall property tax revenue. Yep. But those are the things that we'll tweak as we kind of move forward and get some more information, and maybe that one is one we push out a little further. Excuse me. So now we'll turn to the unfunded liabilities of the district. Okay, this graph looks at the amount of funds on hand, and this is the OPEB is the other post-employment benefits. It's basically the trust fund for retiree medical benefits for district retirees. So you can see we started funding this in about, not we, but the district started funding this in 2010. The light blue portion of the graph represents the contributions that the district has made to the trust fund. The dark blue represents the investment earnings. And this is managed by CalPERS. So it's with the, it's called the CERP, the California Employer Retirement Benefit Trust Fund, the CERP. So you can see 2.6 million in contributions, about 1.3 million in investment earnings for a total of 3.9 million. The earnings represent about 42% of the accumulated assets as of December 31 of 22. You can see from 21 to 22, there's a decline. That represents the downturn last year in the markets as a result of raising interest rates and the impact on some of these fixed rate securities. So that's on the asset side. This chart, the blue bar represents the market value of assets. So you can see in 22, that's $3.9 million that we were just talking about. The orange bars represent the actuarial accrued liability. So that's the long-term liability associated with those retiree medical benefits. And the gray bar is just the difference between the two. So that's the unfunded liability, which is the difference between your liability and the assets that you've set aside for that liability. And then the yellow line going across the top is the funded ratio. So you can see we had 6.2 million of liability as of December 31 of 22, 3.9 million of assets. So our funding ratio is about 63%. Last year it was about 65. So as the market value dropped a little bit on those assets, then our progress dropped a little bit.
I'm sorry, go ahead, I'll let you finish.
No, I was going to say, I think overall the district is doing very well in terms of its funding progress to date.
So this chart to me is a little bit deceiving. If I were to look at one thing, would it be the blue bar that says, hey, we're getting there, or
The gray
bar?
The gray, that's going in a downward trend.
Okay, so that needs to go down.
Yeah.
And last year was really down because the market was still a little bit better.
Yeah.
The market's bad, it goes up a little bit, but overall, if we're looking at a 10-year, it's going down. Yeah. And it'll continue to go up a little bit, but we have to stay ahead of that as we hire people or staff, correct?
Yes, well, right now you're funding everybody you hire now. there shouldn't be an unfunded liability associated
see.
with them. So this is for the past when the district was not putting money aside for this benefit. So we're still making up for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. But going forward, we're putting away money as the benefits are earned every year going forward.
So there's a particular drawdown on that or use, the money comes in and goes to the benefits. What number should we be at to assure that we're meeting our obligation?
Well, right now, we're not paying any money out of this trust fund. We're just putting money in until we get that, till we're fully funded, and
Oh.
then we can start using the investment earnings off of this
Uh-huh.
trust fund to buy down the annual cost
All right.
of benefits,
And
similar to what PERS is doing on the retirement side.
so given the trends that we're seeing here in this graph, how many years out does it look like if we continue the way we're continuing?
We have a chart that looks at that, or we have a graph that looks at that
Uh-huh.
funding. But I'll look ahead and tell you it's projected at 16 years.
16 years, okay.
Yeah, because it started out as a 30-year amortization,
Yeah.
and now we're, 14 years into it. So we have 16 years remaining. But again, it depends on the level of earnings.
Yeah.
That number could go up or down. It's been, if we keep going the way we're going, I think you'll get there sooner than that.
All right. Yeah, I just know it's
But
because.
think of it as a 30-year mortgage.
We,
You're about halfway through.
Yeah.
With an occasional additional payment, as Mark said to me.
So given that we'll be hiring more firefighters as the city grows,
Yes, but again, you'll be putting that money aside on an annual basis for them. There won't be a catch-up like there is today.
And to the extent that we hire, relatively younger firefighters, they will have, I don't know, 10, 20 years, 30 years before they're retired and starting to drain on that. So that
Yep.
gives us kind of a bigger heads up or opportunity to save than if we were bringing in a lot of people that, only had 5 more years before they retired.
More mature, yes.
Yes. So there's a lot of ways of strategizing our financial obligations, but there's trade-offs
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yep.
Makes it fun.
Okay, now we'll take a look at the PERS side of the equation. So, like the other chart, the blue bar, well, in this case, the blue bar is, the blue bar is representing and I don't know why I changed on you. I shouldn't have done that. The blue bar is representing the accrued liability, and the orange bar is representing the market value of investments. Since PERS only does their valuations every 2 years, this is as of December 31 of 21, at kind of the height of the market. And you can see that jump in that yellow line going across the funded ratio, jumped up to 80%. That'll look a lot different when we look at the next one. When the market value it reflects the last year's downturn. But, I'll take it for what it is today. It looks great at 80%. And so this is on a kind of a combined basis. Again, the valuation date is 21 for the pension obligation and 22 for the OPEB. You can see the accrued liability total is 38.4 million on the right. Assets, there's about 30 million in assets. So the unfunded liability is about $8.6 million. So overall, about 78% funded. The pension side, the payoff for that unfunded liability, they track it year by year, so there's different staunches, if you will, or tranches. OPEB's over a 30-year period. Like I said, we're about halfway through. You look at that, we're about halfway through. We're at 63% funded, so I think we're ahead of the game when it comes to the OPEB liability. And that concludes my presentation. The recommended action for the board is to adopt the resolution approving those changes that we looked at earlier with respect to the general fund. I'd be glad to take any questions the board may
Questions
have.
from board members? Not, you have, oh, okay, we have, board have, ready for public comment. Any public comment on this matter? Seeing none? Do we have anybody online?
No, Chair.
All right, thank you. Then we'll close public comment, return to the board for desired action.
No one else has any comments? I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2023-12, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District approving mid-year budget amendments for fiscal year 22-23.
I'll second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Board Member Albanese,
Yes.
Board Member Joseph,
Yes.
Board Member Oro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington,
Yes.
Chair Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, board. Thank you for your presentation. We'll now move on to item 12, 2022 annual report. Recommendation, receive and file the American Canyon Fire Protection District 2022 annual report.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is pretty special. This is the first annual report that we'll be presenting to you with me having the distinct honor of being your fire chief. So this one will go in the scrapbook, and I'll keep it, and I'll show my kids,
All right.
my grandkids, and for years to come, right?
For years to come.
Yeah, when I didn't have as much gray hair as they did as then, or will have in the future. But
I hope your picture's in this.
it is. Photoshop is a wonderful thing when it comes to hair color. I'll tell you that. So also, we're gonna be teaming up with Laura Preventure, our one of our fire executive assistants, and also our PIO. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. Laura, if you could go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that we felt was important to highlight is we are a fire protection district. You know, going out and talking to the community, many people believe that the American Canyon Fire Department is a function of the city government, but it's important to remember our roots. The fire district was actually formed in the 50s, and the city was subsequently incorporated in 1992. So the fire district has quite a long history of serving the community. It's also unique in the fact that the fire district is the only fire protection district in Napa County. All other fire protection services within the county are a form of either city or county government. So we felt it was important just to highlight the fact that we are somewhat unique in the fact that we have a different governance and a different system than traditional fire department. If you go to the next slide, please, Laura. So I call this is one of the bread and butters of what the fire protection district delivers to the community that we serve. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Laura because Laura is really responsible for a lot of the community outreach and public messaging that we do give to the community. So Laura?
Thanks, Chief. Good evening, Chair Garcia and board members. One of the things that we really try to do for our community outreach is focus on diversity, inclusion, and equity. And the way that we do that in this community is through engagement, participation, and accessibility. And we do that through community partnerships, and that's done at all levels of our organization, through all shifts, at all times of day. And we're pretty proud of the way that we interact with our community. And a few of our highlights, I'm not going to go through each one, in 2022 is we educated more than 1,000 of our residents on hands-only CPR, and that continues to make American Canyon a heart-safe community, which is something we're very, very proud of. One of the new things we did this year was we held our first ever quiet hour at our annual open house, and what that hour was being inclusive of kids that may have light or noise sensitivities, and we wanted it to be just a quiet hour where they could still come and enjoy the open house event. with being sensitive to their needs, and that was very successful. It was really cool for us to see this boy latch on to firefighter quick, and he was so knowledgeable about fire trucks, and he just wanted to tell firefighter quick all about it, and Preston just embraced it and really went with it. And to see the connection was just really something that makes us special in American Canyon. The crews partnered with me and really embraced a safe place to trick or treat in American Canyon. We saw over just about 1,000 visitors at the stations, and it grew every year. And we had a line around the station coming to visit, and it was pretty neat. And I'm sure it's going to go up next year. We've partnered with the business community to teach them how to safely use fire extinguishers, which is great out in the industrial park. One of the things we're pretty proud of is growing our social media brand. We've reached over 150,000 people in 2022. And if you consider the population of American Canyon, that's a pretty good reach. We have intentionally invited the community to see who we are as a district through our storytelling. Training drills, our community involvement, or active incidents, but we still are maintaining the integrity and the privacy of the calls. We are including members of American Canyon that may not want to come to a big event, but they can still participate through our storytelling on our social media pages. One campaign that was really quite successful for us this last year was our Meet the Team Mondays. This was a chance for the community to kind of get to know the team of dedicated professionals who serve them. Maybe on their worst day when they have to call 911 and we're entering their home, their personal space, they might recognize a face or two. They might say, hey, I know that person. They might say they feel like they know them, and it's a little bit more comfortable when it's scary. And if we've done that, we've made that connection, we feel like that's a really big win for us. We want our community to know that American Canyon Fire Protection District is making American Canyon a safe place to live, work, and play. Any questions? Okay, great. I'll turn it back over to the chief.
Thank you, Laura, and I can't emphasize the importance of the social media that Laura has done. She talks about diversity, equity, inclusion, and with the social media, that allows us to make a connection with someone that may not feel that they want to leave their home, or may have conditions which preclude them from leaving their homes, but being able to see our team and connect with the fire protection team here, again, like she said, so that there is some familiarity with them before they do have to call 911. So really valuable part of our outreach campaign and connecting with our community, because we realize not everyone can go to meet me in the streets, not everyone can go to Juneteenth, not everyone can go to our fire station, our open house, but pretty much everyone has the ability to connect via social media. So very good job on that, and it continues to grow. If you could go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that we've done for several years is we send out a community service survey to members of the community that do use our services. As you can see, we sent out about 836 surveys. I received about 116 of them, but I think what the important part of it is the overall rating that we get. It's 5 stars. It really illustrates the care, compassion, and empathy that our membership gives to our customers here in the fire district when they do need our services. Next slide, please. So we wanted to talk about some of our top 5 accomplishments that we accomplished last year. The first one was obviously the completion of our master plan, kind of the roadmap that's going to help guide us into the future, so that the district is positioned well to not respond to the growth of the community, but be proactive and make sure that we have things in place prior to the growth reaching its apex, so that we can ensure that there is no degradation of services to the community. Staffing additions, as the board is well aware of, the creation of the battalion chief position, the first ever in the district's history. It was a courageous move and decision by the board to start putting those things in place so that we are ready to accommodate the growth that the community is experiencing now and into the future. Fleet enhancements, we're able to quickly ensure that we are making steps to ensuring that our apparatus, our vehicles that we use to deliver the service to the community, are the most up-to-date, newest, and provide the most technologically advanced and appropriate platform for which our members work off on a daily basis on emergency incidents. Next one is the ISO, or the Insurance Service Office Evaluation. We maintained our rating of 2. And just for those that may not be familiar with it, that is the numerical value that insurance underwriters use when writing your home or business fire insurance policies. They have a rating of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being obviously the worst. For a small fire district, we are in the top percentage of fire departments or fire service delivery organizations within the state having a rating of 2. And when we did do the rating this year, we actually came up a little bit in our points, really firmly securing our rating as a 2. So something that not only the firefighters, but also the board should be very proud of, is that's another way that we enhance or deliver a value to the customers here in the fire district, is by having that insurance rating of 2. And then the last one is kind of keeping up with the theme of some technological advances, is last year we implemented a program called ESO, which is essentially an electronic patient care reporting system. So when our firefighters and our paramedics go out to an emergency incident medically related, we've replaced what used to be done with handwritten notes on patient vitals, patient conditions. It's now done electronically, and using partnership with the ambulance provider here in American Canyon, we can take that patient care report and we can electronically transfer it to the ambulance that is transporting the patient to the hospital. So when they get to the emergency room, they have the most up-to-date patient care report for the condition of the patient, for what we encountered when we first made contact with them, vital signs, so forth, treatments that were provided, and then that ambulance company, as they're transporting, they have the ability to update patient conditions, treatment protocols, and so forth. So literally when the ambulance drops the patient off at the emergency room, it's essentially a live document that has tracked and documented all the patient's vital signs and patient care that was performed on the patient, so that the ER docs and nurses can make treatment decisions based on the most real-time data. So that was something we were really excited about, being able to enhance that.
That's an optimal tool. Well, thank you.
Yeah. The other thing that we really are proud of, and not to sound like we're tooting our own horn, but
It's okay.
we implemented that program in a week. It typically takes 60 to 90 days to implement. But it was implemented and gone live and went live within 7 calendar days.
Remarkable job, thank you.
How did you pull it off so quickly?
I can't give away all my secrets. I want to stick around a little bit longer.
You're just darn good. That's it in a nutshell? Okay.
Well, first of all, it's nothing that any one individual did. It's the team that we have here in American Canyon, as well as working with the vendor. We had some deadlines or some challenges that were related to working with the ambulance provider. And long story short, one of the benefits of being a small organization is you can be very nimble and you can pivot rather quickly. And this really is a highlight of being able to rapidly implement a program. And it was funny when I made the phone call to the vendor. I said, so can we do it in 7 days? There was a long pause. Well, the fastest we've ever done it was 30, and we were cooking. I said, well, how about 7? And they said, okay. So a lot of long hours, but being able to implement it in 7 days is something that we're very, very proud of.
Wow.
And that included getting all of our personnel up and trained. We had some great cooperation with our brothers and sisters at Napa Fire Department. They'd already been using the program. So they brought some of their subject matter experts down and trained our staff so that we were able to go live and fully implement it in 7 days. Next slide, please. So this is, I think, this is a rather telling slide. You know, traditionally we report on the annual report how many calls we ran the previous year, right? So for 2022 is what we're reporting. But we've never looked at it in the context of what have we done in the last 10 years and how does it relate. So last year, 2022, was, as you can see with the graphs in front of you, just under 2,000 calls, but the most calls that have ever been run in the fire district. But I think the other part that's telling with this is, to my knowledge, there's really been no appreciable population growth in American Canyon over that 10-year period. And yet you see that our service demands are steadily increasing each year. So that's something that I think, at least from my perspective, as we start talking about positioning the district for population growth in the future, is we need to keep in mind that we need to look at the trends in relation to population, but also demands for our services. But this is, to me, is pretty telling, and this also really solidifies the decision the board made several years ago to fully staff the second engine company and reopen the James Road Station. The crews are being demanded by the community every single day, and that shows in the call volume statistics that we see. Next slide, please.
Before you go on that one, what's noticeable is in 2018, there was a dip, and then it began climbing again. And I'm trying to figure out what was there. And I realize it's a challenge for you because you weren't working here in 2018. But any reason why it just dipped like that and then started it back up again?
You know, I don't know. We'd have to dig in a little bit more on that. But that is somewhat of an anomaly.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a dip. It could have been, part of it could have been that we had such an active wildfire season in 2017. So our crews were deployed more frequently throughout the state, assisting other jurisdictions with fires. That probably was certainly one of the contributing factors to that dip. But we'd have to dig in a little bit more.
That's probably the better explanation than anything else. So thank you.
So this just kind of breaks down our calls for service by a couple different types. Obviously, rescue and emergency services, traditionally the medical aid side of the fire business. About 66%, which is a little bit lower than some of the industry standards or industry trends. But in our mind, it just solidifies the importance of our advanced life support program and our paramedic program we have here at the district. Good intent calls, service calls, false alarms. Fires are about 4.1%, or about 80 fires. Hazardous conditions such as power lines down, things like that make up about 2.4. And the service calls really are, they aren't necessarily the emergent. We're not responding with our lights and sirens, but for our customers that do call us, those are very significant calls. Those could be something as common as individuals fallen, they need help getting back up, they need help getting into their bed, things like that, that, you know, if we aren't there to be able to respond, they could lay there potentially for several hours or several days, depending on what their in-home support network looks like. But it is also a very important call, even though it doesn't classify as a emergent lights and sirens type call. Then we looked at also our out-of-district calls, or our calls that we provide to adjoining agencies through what we refer to as our automatic aid agreements. So basically, in certain geographical areas surrounding the fire district, we're dispatched simultaneously as the agency having jurisdiction. You see to Napa County about 71 calls. Predominantly those are vehicle accidents and so forth along the Broadway, Highway 29 corridor up to Jameson Canyon. And then you look at the city of Vallejo, slightly higher at 107 incidents. Obviously, Vallejo's a rather busy system. But I think the one part that people, when they look at that, they go, gee, you went to Vallejo 107 times. What's up with that? Well, it's reciprocated. So when we get a significant incident here in American Canyon, such as a structural fire, Vallejo reciprocates the volume of calls that we go into their jurisdiction with a weight of response that they provide to us. So on a standard residential structure fire, they provide a ladder truck, a fire engine, and because we don't have battalion chiefs, a chief officer. So it really balances out with the weight in which they respond to our incidents to make up for the amount of times that we go into their jurisdiction. But overall, I think, you know, the fire service in California particularly is founded on the mutual aid concept, neighbors helping neighbors, and the automatic aid that we provide to our adjoining jurisdictions is also reciprocated to us. So we wanted to change a little bit. Traditionally, we've reported out incidents by lack of a better term, neighborhood or geographical area, but I think that the heat map really kind of shows a really good total picture of the fire district, the areas that are demanding service for our firefighters every day throughout the year, but really shows that really demands for service are really evenly distributed amongst the fire district, and obviously predominantly within the city just because of the population density there. Fire prevention, that's another very important component that we provide here to the residents of the fire district. We have a contractual relationship with CSG Consulting, which does our fire marshal and certain level of inspection services for us. So it really shows kind of the workload of the fire prevention arm of the fire service, or fire district here. And then looking towards the future, obviously we have continuing with our staffing, evaluating our staffing models and facility needs to ensure that we are positioned well to meet the needs of a growing community before that growth reaches its apex. Continuing with our community outreach, again, recruitment, upward growth, being able to promote internal candidates to help fill our staffing. And we're also using that as part of our recruitment strategy. Not to belabor the point with the battalion chiefs, but it truly now we have a clear career path for someone that walks in day one in the fire district that has aspirations to be a fire chief. There's now a clear career path of to be able to progress to that position. And it's also a recruitment tool because as a smaller fire district, you know, traditionally the promotional opportunities have kind of stopped at the captain level, but now we have that ability all throughout our ranks to be able to promote and have that upward career development within the organization. And then obviously last is always the continued research and searching for additional revenue sources for the fire district. whether it's grants or it's public-private partnerships with the development community. That's something that we're looking at every day and looking to see where we can secure additional funding and revenue sources for the fire district. And with that, that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. So it's a whole new look. And I think you have 3 pictures in there.
I'm gonna have to talk to whoever put it in. We should limit it at 1, I think.
No, it's a great report. It's something to be quite very proud of in what you have accomplished. It's remarkable.
Thank
And,
you.
just speaks to the quality of service based on the commitment of those who are engaged in it. So thank you. Thank all our staff.
Thank you. It really highlights the strength of the team that we have here in American Canyon at the fire district.
Certainly does. Any comments from board directors?
Great report.
Right? Ready for public comment? Anybody from the public wishing to comment on this?
Beth Marcus, I just want to say, give kudos again to Laura. I really look forward to seeing on Facebook not only the Meet the Team, but whenever there's somebody who's doing their drills or whatever, it's exciting to see it, you know. And I'm fortunate because with being on the CERT team, we get to meet the firefighters, and I just want to say thank you, Chief, for all the support and trust that you have in us as well. But keep up the good job.
Fran, I'd like to thank the fire department because I've used them many times, and they're so good. You know, it's terrible when you get old, you fall, and there's no way in the world you can get up. Luckily, I haven't been hurt too bad. So I do appreciate you guys very, very, very much. Thank you.
Luckily, you're still young.
And Fran, we do appreciate your cameo in our annual report this year.
I saw my picture.
You got your picture in it, Fran. I was just catching up here the photo of the CERT team. That's remarkable how many we have in American Canyon. I think that's just credit to leadership within that organization, particularly Paul Helms, the one who wanted to bring it back to life.
We are very, very fortunate to have such a strong CERT program that we do here have in American Canyon. It's not the same, it's not like that everywhere. We have a highly dedicated group of individuals, and yes, Powell provides excellent leadership for the CERT team, but we're very happy to have them, and we're glad to support them however we can.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Anybody else from the public want to comment? Anybody online?
No, Chair.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Well, excellent report. I think our requirement is there to receive and file. Is there a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I don't know if we need a motion to receive and file, but
Receive and file.
if we do, I'll make it.
We need a motion to receive and file, Mr. Ross?
No, you really don't.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for the report.
Take back my motion.
It wasn't gonna get seconded anyway, so.
Okay. We're here to Fire Chief oral report.
Thank you again, Chair. A couple items just wanted to highlight for the board as well as those that may be watching us or in the room. The first is, while we experienced an extraordinary winter, I believe probably one of the coldest winters ever and probably one of the wettest winters ever, we are starting to turn that corner to our traditional dry season and summertime. So just a reminder to everyone out there that now is the time to start taking care of your properties before a fire occurs with mowing your weeds and ensuring that you're in compliance with the district's weed abatement ordinance. So that goes into effect June 1st, but please don't wait till June 1st to do the work. Do the work well before so that you are prepared in case we do get a fire or something else happens and you could have prevented further damage by having your weeds done prior to. We'll be opening a continuous recruitment here shortly for firefighter paramedics. So look forward to getting to meet more potential candidates that want to come join American Canyon Fire Protection District, but want to give a plug out for those that may be looking at a career in the fire services. We will be doing a continuous recruitment starting next month. Wanted to bring up another thing that Ken alluded to in his presentation. You may have recalled that last year we initially budgeted about $140,000 for handheld radios to update handheld radios for our firefighters. That would have covered about 14 radios. We identified a need of 25 radios. We were able to work through 2 grant sources, one from Napa County Office of Emergency Services, and then the other was through a federal grant authored by Congressman Thompson for radio communications here in Napa County. We're happy to report that we were successful in securing 25 handheld radios. Roughly an estimated cost of about $250,000 for zero cost for the district. So the radios are currently being programmed, and we look forward to getting those into the hands of our firefighters very soon, but really wanted to acknowledge Napa County Office of Emergency Services as well as Congressman Thompson, and because of our relationship with Napa Central Dispatch, more importantly, the city of Napa for considering us and keeping us in mind when the monies came in. They affectionately refer to us as Station 6 and 7, and they very easily could have not considered us, and we would have not have been successful recipients of 19 radios through that program. So very thankful for those 2 entities to keep American Canyon in mind.
You know, that's just something that helps the district all work together. Together. I mean, you consider the larger disasters we've faced.
Yep.
And the ability to communicate is essential in that. So,
Yep.
Good move. That just shows
Yeah.
everybody's working together.
Yeah. And then last, but certainly not least, and probably more importantly, really wanted to give a big heartfelt thank you to both Martha and Laura for all the work and support they do for the fire district. They truly are the Chief 1 and Chief 2 of the fire district and the glue that keeps everything together, but it is Admin Professionals Week, and wanted to just thank them both and acknowledge all the hard work they do day in and day out for the fire district to help keep everything running smoothly and the operation moving forward. So Martha and Laura, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
bravo. Thank you.
And with that, Chair, that concludes my report
Okay.
for this evening.
Move now to chair board comments, committee reports, and any future agenda items. Anybody from the board?
I
Go
I
ahead.
don't have any future agenda reports, but I did want to give a shout out to Board Member Oro. He walked from his house. I normally do that when the weather is decent, but I've got about a 10 or 15 minute walk. I'm not sure how long David had.
30.
30, so
Good for you.
hats off. So,
Very good. Anything further from the board?
I was just going to mention one other thing that the stats didn't show, and that's that, you know, you guys actually save lives. I don't know if you remember, last year I had a call to my house where a friend of mine had a heart attack, and the hospital explained to him that had it not been for the firefighters that came to rescue him, he would not be here today. So again, a big thank you, because
Wow.
you can't put a price tag on saving somebody's life. So again, appreciate everything that you do, the department.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, we often don't get to hear those kind of success stories, and it's really important for the folks that are out there delivering that good customer service and patient care every day to hear feedback like that. So thank you.
Any other comments from directors? Well, if none, then we have completed our work for this evening. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
And good night, American Canyon.